Hey guys, welcome back to another day of Stonks Maxxing, day 182. It's currently 12, been chilling so far, but kind of have some more flashcards we could go over. Been reading a bit, so let's try to go through some of these. This is the Human Body book I ended up getting by DK, and I think a lot of this has to do with the endocrine system, so let's take a look. Oh, first one. So what is the endocrine system? Oh, fuck. I accidentally pressed. Okay, so the endocrine system, without looking at it, it's one of the major bodies, or I guess body systems within our body. And it's in charge of the production of hormones. And hormones are really chemical messages that store and encode data that gets sent around our body. Evolved in the body's information business. Okay, it's good to know. So the endocrine system is involved in the body's information business. The key product of the endocrine system are hormones, biological messengers, okay, across our body. What is a gland in our body? What are the major types of glands? Okay, so a gland, I think a good definition is just anything in our body that secretes some type of fluid into different parts. So I think the major types of gland are endocrine glands that supply hormones, that produces hormones, and exocrine glands, which produce other types of fluids. So I think skin glands, I believe, probably sweat glands, and maybe even glands within our stomach, which I think pancreas is one, or I guess that's near our stomach, that produces digestive enzymes. Glands are parts of the body that produce and release substances. There are two major types of glands. So endocrine glands, they secrete hormones into our body, and exocrine glands, so these are other fluids like, I said swear, but it's really sweat, saliva, and other digestive enzymes. So definition of an organ, I think high-level definition is just anything within our body that's a collection of tissue. I believe tissue is also just defined as a concentrated collection of cells. And an organ is this collection of tissues, or maybe a collection of pieces, parts, that does a very specific task. And are structurally distinct. What does the pancreas do? Where is it located? So the pancreas is in, or I guess is a gland within the endocrine system, and it's located very close to the stomach. But what it does is kind of two parts. One of them is it secretes a hormone called insulin. Let me actually take a step back further, because I think there's two different things. I think one of them starts with an A. There's these cells called like acerrin cells. I could be saying that wrong. And they help produce digestive enzymes. Whenever you eat, I guess it helps break down the nutrients. And the second is, I believe, within these cells, the Acini cells, there's a collection of alpha, beta, and delta cells that form something called the Isle of Lamhart. I don't remember the exact name. But what's interesting about these aisles is this is where hormones get produced by alpha and beta cells. So I believe alpha cells, they produce glucagon, which I think is a hormone that helps signal that the body needs to, or the liver, which I believe is where most of the I think it's glycogen, that it's the hormone that's produced, and then glucagon is kind of this chemical compound that stores potential energy. So that is located in our liver typically, if I remember correctly. And it's the glycogen that signals the liver that, hey, we need to break this down and convert that chemical potential energy into energy that the body can use. And then beta cells, they're the ones that produce insulin. So insulin helps lower the blood sugar levels, so the glucose levels, while the glycogen helps increase the blood sugar levels. So insulin lowers the blood sugar levels by telling the body that, hey, we need to turn this glucose in our bloodstream into glucagon and then store that. So the pancreas is a dual-purpose gland, produces acini. Okay, so acini cells, and it produces hormones involved. Oh shit! And it produces hormones involved in controlling glucose blood sugar in cell clusters called islets of Langerhans. Okay, so I believe this is the islet. So these big clusters here are acini cells, and this circle is an islet of Langerhans. And I guess the alpha cells, it's not super clear. Probably these red, and then the dark red could be a delta cell. The beta cells seem like they're the white ones. They're the ones that produce the insulin. Okay. Okay, so pancreas is connected to the small intestines, or this, I'm not too sure what this is. Maybe it's the colon, large intestine, small intestines. I'm not too sure exactly what this is. There's a splenic artery. Okay, pancreatic hormones. Glucagon. Okay, so glucagon is the hormone. Shit. Alright. Okay, so islets of Langerhans, these are the collection of alpha, beta, and delta cells within the pancreas that are surrounded typically by tissues of acini cells. Or, I'm going to just say acini for now. So, let me see. Shoot. Just realized it's... Okay, nice. It's going good, it's going good. Let's get to the Enki again. Okay, so islets of Langerhans, what do they do? So they're these collections or clusters of cells, alpha, beta, and delta cells within the pancreas. They're surrounded by acini cells, and they produce two types of hormones. So alpha cells, they're in charge of increasing the blood sugar levels in our body. So that's typically whenever we need energy. Glucose, which is the blood sugar, is a form of energy, and I believe it's stored in our liver and maybe in different parts of our body as something called glycogen, which is kind of like this chemical compound that stores this chemical potential energy. And that potential energy, I believe, is the bonds of the atoms within the glucose structure. If they get broken down, they can get turned or converted to a different form of energy. So that's alpha cells. Beta cells, they produce something called hormones. Sorry, not hormones. They produce a hormone called insulin. And insulin is in charge of lowering the blood sugar levels. So I guess when you have someone that has diabetes, let's say type 1 diabetes, typically their pancreas, especially their beta cells, are not able to effectively produce the hormone insulin, so that you have really high blood sugar levels compared to what's the normal amount. And what insulin does to regulate or to lower the amount of blood sugar in our body is it speeds up the process of turning that glucose into a form of potential energy, so into a chemical compound called glycogen, and that's stored in different parts of our body, but it's no longer flowing in our blood, so yeah, it gets converted. Glycogen, glucagon, glycogen, glycogen, okay. Within the acinar tissue, in our clusters of alpha cells, beta cells, and delta cells that create hormones that regulate blood sugar, glucose levels, that raises blood sugar levels by stimulating the breakdown of glycogen into glucose. So the head of a pancreas, this kind of looks like a pistol almost. Okay, so the head is where you pull the trigger, and the tail looks like where the bullet fires. So the body, okay, so these circular figures probably are the acini tissue, or the acini cells, or acinar tissue. Okay, and it seems like this is connected to whatever this is, common bile duct. That's also connected to something else. All right. So interlobular ducts, the flows of digestive enzymes to duodenum. Not too sure what that is. So it looks like our the pancreas is below or underneath our stomach. Looks like maybe behind the back. Actually, I don't know. So the acinar cells, capillary networks, and then the islets of Langerhans. Okay. Central ducts. Seems like they do pass through each of these tissues of acinar. I don't know what this is. Maybe other tissue. Okay. So what is the endocrine system? The endocrine system is involved in the information business in our bodies. So they help create hormones that send information to our bodies. They send signals, chemical signals, to help our body perform some type of task. Key product of the endocrine system are hormones, biological messengers across the body. So the pancreas, what does that do? Where is it located? The pancreas is one of the glands, I guess it's a dual purpose gland, that produces hormones, so that's part of the endocrine system, but also produces digestive enzymes. So I guess that's maybe an exocrine system type activity. And it's located near the stomach. And within it, you have acini cells, and alpha, beta, delta cells within these islets of Langerhans. Okay. Cell clusters called islets of Langerhans. Let's see. So I don't think I'm acini cells. So it's not acini, it's acinar. Okay. Acinar. So gland in our body is just anything that produces and supplies a substance to be used within our body. So major types of glands, you have exocrine glands, which you can think of as sweats. You could probably also think of it as maybe like urine or fluid. And then hormones, which are part of the endocrine glands. So you can think insulin as a hormone, glucagon as a hormone, glycogen, I guess as a substance, testosterone as a hormone, estrogen as a hormone. Yeah. Sweat, saliva, okay, digestive enzymes, right. Saliva, digestive enzymes. Okay. Paul Ehrlich. He was let's go to life sciences again. Okay, so John Bennett, his contribution to oncology, he was an oncologist. I guess I should say a physician. Before then, I guess oncology was after his time. John Bennett was a physician in 1845, and he was one of the first physicians to discover the idea of cancer, specifically leukemia, cancer in the white blood cells, or I guess the abnormal growth of white blood cells. And he contributed to oncology by describing leukemia as kind of the separation of blood. And if you remember from the previous streams, we learned that the separation of blood is really the body's response to an infection. What happens then is you have a lot of pus being built up. What pus is, it's this yellow, white-like fluid that contains white blood cells, it contains bacteria, and also contains a lot of dead white blood cells, bacteria, and even other cells. So it's this weird concoction of cells, bacteria, that forms in response to an infection. But you'll get to see in other flashcards that leukemia isn't really the body's response to an infection. Rudolf Virchow kind of noticed that there was this enlarged spleen, and he didn't really see any signs of an infection within the body. So he made the term, or he coined the term leukemia to describe the disease. 1800s. So definition of an organ. I guess definition of an organ, any type of tissue, or I guess collection of tissue that does a very specific task and is structurally distinct. Yeah. What is lymphoma? So lymphoma is a cancer in lymphocytes. I think it's the abnormal growth of lymphocytes, which can be thought of as B cells or T cells. B lymphocytes, T lymphocytes. So second chapter for Blood and Money, it's called Man of Science. It's really the origin story of pharmacyclics and the original pioneers of the business. The big characters to know are Richard Miller and Jonathan Sessler. Richard Miller, he was a Stanford oncologist, also helped found, along with Ron Levy, another Stanford oncologist, IDEC Pharmaceuticals in 1985. And IDEC Pharmaceuticals helped develop rituximab, which was the first ever monoclonal antibody used to treat cancer. I don't remember exactly when it was approved, but IDEC Pharmaceuticals was one of the companies that helped develop it. And Richard Miller ended up leaving, actually, in 1991. So he left in 1991 to start Pharmacyclics with Jonathan Sessler, who actually was one of his cancer patients. Jonathan Sessler was a chemist at the University of Texas, and together they tried to take this molecule called texafrin, approved through clinical trials, and take it to market. But didn't really work out. It wasn't really that effective, and it had pretty bad side effects during clinical trials. So you'll see later on in the chapter, J. Craig Venter starts popping up. He was the CEO and founder of Celera, which is one of the companies that helped map the human genome. And they try to use that knowledge to develop an in-house pharmaceutical business, but ended up trying to divest that. And they did divest a magic ingredients or magic formula, the BTK Burton tyrosine kinase inhibitor, that would turn out to be Imbruvica, but that's later in the story. Excitrin. Okay. So distinct parts does Emperor of all maladies have? I guess the 6 different parts of black color without boils, number 1. Number 2 is an impatient war. Number 3 is will you turn me out if I don't get better? Excuse me. Number 4 is Number 4, maybe a distorted version of oneself. Number 5 could be prevention is the cure, and number 6 is the fruits of our long endeavors. Prevention is the cure. Not boiling. Okay. I think it's pretty good. So leukemia. Leukemia is a cancer in the abnormal growth of white blood cells. So I'm going to be honest, I don't fully understand what the difference is between leukemia versus lymphoma, but I know it's the abnormal growth of white blood cells. It affects white blood cells and our bone marrow. And affects all white blood cells. Okay, I guess not just lymphocytes. Describe what islets of Langerhans are and what they do. Okay, so the islets of Langerhans, they are a collection of tissue within our body. It's the best way to put it. I guess a collection of alpha cells, beta cells, and delta cells within the acinar tissue of a pancreas. And this part of our pancreas is kind of the endocrine system. So they're participants in the endocrine system. They're in the business of information. Alpha cells, they're in charge of regulating let's say both alpha cells and beta cells are helpful regulators of our blood sugar levels or glucose levels. Alpha cells, they help increase the blood sugar levels by creating a hormone called glucagon, which helps signal our body that we need to convert glycogen, which is this chemical compound that is stored within our liver, has a lot of chemical potential energy, and then convert that into glucose, which is energy within our body that can be easily converted and used for powering our cells. I guess that's a good way to put it. And then you have the beta cells. And the beta cells, they're in charge of decreasing the blood sugar levels in our body by creating a hormone called insulin. What insulin does is it tells our body that we need to convert the glucose in our bloodstream and turn that into glycogen. So we can store that in this compound that doesn't take up a lot of space, I guess. It's efficient, and it can be used for later as opposed to right now. So it's kind of like storing it in SSD, maybe, if I were to make some type of analogy. Instead of having it in working memory, which is in the bloodstream of our body, we're storing it in solid state drive for now. And then whenever we need it, that conversion, or yes, that read process, so we're reading from storage into memory. That's kind of the breakdown of glycogen into glucose. Glucose glycogen, which is then stored in the liver, can later be broken down to release energy. Okay, so I guess a good way to remember this is insulin helps you write to storage, and then glucagon helps you read from storage, essentially. Okay. Pancreas do. So pancreas is a dual-purpose gland, so it does kind of two things. It supports your exocrine system, which is used to produce any type of fluid or any type of substance, like sweat, saliva, even digestive enzymes. And then it's also part of the endocrine system, which helps produce hormones that send chemical messages across your body. And it's located right near your stomach, so it's pretty close to where all of that digestive magic happens. Acinar cells. Okay, right. So I guess that's really important. Produces digestive enzymes in cells called acinar cells, and it produces hormones involved in controlling glucose in cell clusters called islets of Langerhans. Okay. Yeah, it's very interesting. So we're slowly chipping away at some of these Let's go to industries, so we could probably go to healthcare. Okay, high-level summary of Eli Lilly's founding story. So Eli Lilly was actually founded a while ago, back in 1876, by Colonel Eli Lilly. I guess this is probably during or after the Civil War, but he had created this company. I believe they were in the business of medicine early on. One of the big ones at the time, I keep forgetting the name. It's like this weird name that starts with an A. It's two words, A-S something. Acidocephalus? I don't know. But it was used to treat syphilitic afflictions, whatever that means. And I guess the company really had its big break during the 1920s when they were able to collaborate with some University of Toronto researchers to help promote insulin at a much larger scale, at a commercial scale. So they were to manufacture it. I believe what they did was they first took the pancreas of animals that were being disposed of. People that ate pork didn't really eat the pancreas of the pork, so whenever butchers, I guess, killed their animals, they would have leftover organs that they would probably sell to Eli Lilly. Succus alternus. There's a blood purifier in treatment. Okay, so that's important. So blood purifier in treatment. Okay. Okay, the 3 Ps of healthcare. I guess that's pretty interesting. Kind of like the provider, payer, and patient. Like the 5 Ps of I guess the 4 Ps of marketing. Yeah. Product, placement, promotion, and price. No, my girlfriend said she's car sick. It's not great. High-level founding story of Merck. So Merck was founded also pretty late, I believe in the 1800s, by George Merck, and then his son or grandson, George W. Merck, ended up taking over in 1925. And he really changed the company. At first it was this chemical distribution company in New York. But when George W. Merck took over, he really focused the company on building medicine. And fast forward, I guess, almost a century, and in 2009, the company merged with Schering-Plough, and in 2014, Merck released its blockbuster Keytruda drug, which was one of the first ever checkpoint inhibitors to treat cancer. Specifically, it inhibits the binding of the PD-1 receptor on T cells. Schering-Plough. Schering-Plough in 2009, released Keytruda in 2014. Okay. Top selling drugs by revenue in 2024, drug manufacturer revenue and indications. Okay, I don't have the revenues here. I feel like I keep forgetting to do that. It takes a lot of time. But top selling drugs by revenue, 2024. Number 1, Keytruda, 29 billion, that's for sure. Number 2 could be a toss-up between Ozempic, Novo Nordisk, that treats diabetes, weight loss. You also have Biktarvy, which is an antiviral, I guess a HIV treatment. I shouldn't say antiviral, but I think it's something to use to treat the symptoms of HIV and prevent it from spreading. I guess that could be an antiviral. So that's made by Gilead. You also have Dupixent, which is a drug by Sanofi, used to treat eczema or atopic dermatitis. And then Skyrizi, which is used to treat plaque psoriasis. It's made by AbbVie. And Humira 2, that's number 10, or I guess bottom of our list, I think, used to treat rheumatoid arthritis. And then 2 drugs from Johnson & Johnson. One of them is Stelara, which is used to treat plaque psoriasis. And then Darzalex, which is used to treat multiple myeloma. Eliquis, which is an anticoagulant by Bristol Myers Squibb and Pfizer. And then Opdivo, which is another checkpoint inhibitor, PD-1 checkpoint inhibitor, similar to Keytruda, that's made by Bristol Myers Squibb. Darzalex, okay, multiple myeloma. Ono Pharma treats various cancers. Humira, rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, it's not bad. So determine, let's see. What does the term checkpoint inhibitor means? Please provide an example. So the term checkpoint inhibitor does refer to the idea of some type of drug that prevents, let's say, an antigen, a cancer cell, from binding to, let's say, a specific receptor, typically on immune cells. Because immune cells, they're the ones that protect our body. They're the ones that are the army, the military, that help fight off, that kill essentially cancer cells and other bacteria and viruses. So the checkpoint inhibitor typically blocks cancer cells from binding to a specific checkpoint. The checkpoint is really like a key receptor that can act as a brake or act as a camouflage, let's say, so that the T cell or any type of immune cell does not attack the cancer cell. But the checkpoint inhibitor will block that from happening, so it essentially allows the T cell to correctly identify the cancer cell and will eventually kill it. So examples of this are Opdivo and Keytruda. They both target the same checkpoint, which is the PD-1 receptor on T cells. Okay, so here it looks like the checkpoint in CTLA. immune checkpoint. Okay. So it's kind of like a self-defense, prevent them from killing normal cells. Got it. So checkpoints are... okay, that's a good way to put it. I think that's one thing I did forget. They're like these regulators, self-regulators on, I'll call them, on immune cells that prevent them from killing normal cells. Yeah. Oh man, I'm kind of hungry now. I feel my stomach rumbling. Been doing this for 30 minutes, so I think that's pretty good. I'll do this one, and then I'll probably get some food to eat, make some eggs, something like that. But high-level founding story behind Novo Nordisk. So August Hugh and H.C. Hagedorn, they founded Nordisk, and then this guy named Thorvald Peterson ended up breaking off from the company, I believe in 1924, maybe 1929. And then the two companies merged back together in 1989. So there were two competing companies in Denmark that had the exclusive right to build insulin and sell that to Europe, essentially. And then two companies merged in 1989. Yeah. Thorvald Peterson in 1924. Okay. Agus Crow. Got it. Agus Crow. So I think with that, I'll come back a bit later. Stomach feels like it needs some help. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.